Dying Light the Beast is a moment of celebration for Techland. Kyle Crane is back. The visuals are sharpened, the gameplay is deeper, the world is more developed, the franchise is growing, and everything that makes Dying Light great remains front and center. But Dying Light the Beast is also a moment of contemplation. The past few years have been hard on developers, and that hasn't changed yet. As other developers are contemplating the direction of the industry, so too is Techland, and it's easy to see how all of that manifests in a classic story as old as the industry: zombies. Our ultimate goal for this series is to make Dying Light the go-to zombie game, the ultimate zombie experience, franchise director Timon Smektala told me for Game Rant Advance, reflecting words I've heard him echo before. This humility has always caught me off guard, as there's no best zombie game list complete without the name Dying Light, and Dead Island in some instances. But after exchanging over 10,000 worlds with Smektala and other Techland devs about Dying Light the Beast for Game Rant Advance, it became clear. The story of Dying Light the Beast development is the story of Techland's humility, which is also the story of this industry. But to understand that, we have to go back to day one. Dying Light the Beast originally began as a DLC for Dying Light 2 Stay Human, which leaked online. This moment is what Smektala wishes people would forget because he worries it paints a picture that is slightly undeserved. For some, this is an interesting development and understood iteration of the original creative idea. For others, there will always be complaints that Dying Light the Beast is a DLC, and that's simply untrue. As anyone who understands iteration can attest, ideas will change rapidly. A single idea is not worth much in game development. A dozen, a little more so. But the ability to execute on a strong idea is what matters. That initial iteration doesn't have that much in common with the fully fledged game that players will get to play in the end. In a perfect world, this origin would remain a skeleton in Techland's closet. As Smektala explained it, Techland burned that old work to the ground and built a new game on its ashes, turning the lackluster situation of the leak into a real, genuine strength for the company. The fuel for that fire was Kyle Crane. The DLC would have used Dying Light 2's protagonist, Aiden Caldwell, but that's not what was best for the story or for the game. In a healthy move, this decision reset development and Techland returned to pre-production to prepare a brand new game for the series. Perhaps the ruthless antagonist and beautiful apocalypse concept remains similar, but even then, it's a stretch. This new story was Kyle Crane's story, and Techland worked throughout this new pre-production period to determine the scope of the game. Some decisions made include, but are not limited to, increasing the map and making it more varied, creating a few dozen new characters, writing a huge number of brand new quests and side quests, allowing ourselves to have a bigger ambition in terms of technological improvements made to our own in-house C engine. At the end of that pre-production period, everyone at the studio understood that what we're looking at is the next game series, one that we were fully ready to pour all of our hearts into. In summation, Smektala also added, every game starts somehow. From a genius idea, from an iteration of an existing genre, from the urge to tell something. We started from a leaked project of smaller scale, but this ember allowed us to create something very special to the whole team, and to bring back Kyle Crane a little bit faster than we initially anticipated. I wasn't here at the beginning of Game Rant. When it started in 2009, I was a kid playing games to escape the hardships of my childhood. I joined Game Rant in 2017, and have always had an appreciation for our origin story, which I see reflected in Dying Light the Beast. They were born from an idea that spun off an ill-timed leak. Game Rant was born from an idea that spun off from a digital publication, Screen Rant. In 2009, Screen Rant editors Rob Keyes and Ben Kendrick sought to establish Game Rant as its own site during a boom period for websites. As editor-in-chief Anthony Tormina wrote in celebration of Game Rant's 15-year anniversary, Game Rant was, at the time, a side project, the younger sibling to an older, wiser, more established elder. We were a standalone DLC who have always had the shadow of those origins cast over us. Not so different from a project turning from a DLC into a full-fledged game. Dying Light the Beast story is our story, but this is a story told 100 times in the industry. From a genius idea, from an iteration, from a DLC, from a spin-off, the game industry has always been born from something else. In the 1950s, the technology was born out of computer scientists working with electronic machines, deciding to have a little fun with it. From Pong to the arcade, the industry continued to evolve from an ever-evolving door of something else's. What if technology, but fun? And so consoles would be born, and so PC technology would expand, and so too would the industry rocket. The industry has humble origins, reflecting Techland's humility in its role in the zombie genre and reflecting the simplest places everyone's ideas have sprouted. And it grew, and it grew, and it busted, and it recovered, and it grew into an industry that many believe still to be recession and pandemic proof, even as gamers stare at a plethora of issues in the industry today. But these humble origins of great ideas are everywhere. Pokemon evolved from Satoshi Tajiri's love of catching bugs. The first Final Fantasy was so named because Hironobu Sakaguchi planned to quit video games if it didn't sell well. Untitled Goose Game was born out of a joke that a photo of a goose should be a video game protagonist. There are scores, if not hundreds, of these similar stories told throughout the industry. And so, Humble Origins is the story of video games. Kyle Crane fandom is alive everywhere, in and around Techland. The decision regarding Kyle Crane's fate wasn't made on the spot for Dying Light the Beast. Smectala confirmed the broad strokes of Kyle's fate had been known to Techland since working on the lore for Dying Light 2 Stay Human, as a way to keep the franchise narrative consistent and continuous. Dying Light the Beast is set to answer many questions regarding the lore and Kyle Crane. But I also asked how Techland was able to identify these questions. It was easier than I anticipated, with Smectala saying, "It's very easy to identify these questions, as they are exactly the same questions that you have to answer, squirming like an eel at every possible opportunity, every meeting with fans, and every meeting with the media." I answered, or had to avoid answering, the question, "What's the canon ending of the following?" probably 1,000 times in my professional life. It had to end one day. But even with all this information at their disposal, that wasn't completely enough to bring Kyle Crane back. Smectala confirmed that Roger Craig Smith accepting the role was the match that lit the fire of his return. As Smectala told me, the crucial part of us starting the work on Dying Light the Beast was making sure we could get Roger Craig Smith on board. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what we'd do if Roger said no. I think this could actually make us look for a different story to tell. Thankfully, Roger found time for us. Not easy for a voice actor of such status, and not only agreed to take part in the project, but also saw this as an opportunity to deliver one of the strongest performances of his career, using all the experience he gathered over these 10+ years to create a changed, more mature take on Kyle Crane. Of course, Kyle Crane is so iconic in Dying Light, and that is due in large part to Smith's performance. Anyone else wouldn't deliver the same version of Kyle, much less a matured version. And that's not knocking our industry's actors. They are varied, amazing, and top tier, so much so that they become iconic to their roles. Kyle Crane is Roger Craig Smith. Roger Craig Smith is Kyle Crane, and a bunch others. It wouldn't be the same with all of this exemplifying the roles that gamers, media, and actors have in game development. This reflects other industry stories, of course. For example, the SAG-AFTRA strikes that ended in July were only one part of making sure that our people were respected and treated well in the industry. They should all, by and large, be treated like Roger Craig Smith here. Every member of the gaming media and game developers the world over know the feeling of running out of time. Deadlines and production qualms are everywhere, and Techland understood it needed to deliver Dying Light the Beast sooner rather than later. That initial leak basically demanded it. Smectala described the early months and first year of the project as extremely intensive. Continuing, "Since we felt that we were running on time and there are Dying Light fans out there who expected us to deliver something soon, we decided to assume a very focused approach to production. Usually, when you work on a game as expansive as Dying Light the Beast, you allow yourself some spare time to make mistakes, learn from them, and improve the concept through that learning. But for the Beast, it was different, as we were going into the project full of learnings from Dying Light 2 Stay Human, and from various ways where it strayed from the original formula. But there's something very important about this type of production. Techland and many of its developers have 10 years of experience working on this franchise, making it helpful for tackling such a situation. Techland, as a company, has also retained a lot of talent that worked on the original Dying Light games, not even performing layoffs after canceling 2 in-development games. Having already established what Dying Light is, Dying Light the Beast was about taking all those core pillars even further. It was a ton of work with a lot of changes happening over the span of weeks and months, and its accelerated, rapid-paced work is only possible because of Techland's strengths. Not only does this speak to the importance of talent retention in the industry, but it also comes awfully close to an elephant in the room: the current economic climate surrounding game development. Smectala didn't just address the elephant, he shot it. The current economic climate is so harsh, he said, that for a developer with our experience in industry, we owe it to our players and our developers to be very, very focused on what we are doing, fully leveraging all of our previous learnings and insights. I don't want to say that Dying Light the Beast is a safe sequel, as we're doing a number of things that take us outside of our comfort zone. The new environment, so far away from our usual cityscapes, the beast mode which clashes with the survival feel of our series, but we're trying to be very, very considerate with all the decisions we make. In 2024, several funding opportunities for game developers just up and disappeared. Layoffs were everywhere. There's a common mantra: survive till 25, with faith and hope that more opportunities would open up. By and large, it appears that the economic strife of this year has utterly danced upon the dead body of survive till 25, and developers are now just taking licks till 26. Meanwhile, the gaming media landscape has been shaken up considerably, with the AI apocalypse consistently presenting new challenges and entire sites falling to the whims of search engines. The challenges that Smectala references are industry-wide challenges, and yet they persist. As do many members of the media, as do many developers the world over, and that poses a certain question. Why? We share humble origins, we share our reliance and cooperation on one another, we share the same challenges and hardships, but why do we keep on keeping on? The answer was laced in every word Techland developers said to me. Listen closely, and you'll feel it. Dying Light the Beast puts players back in control of Kyle Crane after he escapes a 13-year captivity at the hands of the Baron. There's a new setting, Castor Woods, which is much more rural compared to the cityscapes of past games. But the key Dying Light pillars are all there. The most important learning from Dying Light 2, according to Smectala, was not to be afraid of creating a demanding, challenging experience. That's why we made Night so scary, parkour so grounded, and combat so physical and balanced towards survival. In the years after Dying Light's following DLC, many fans have clamored to know more of Kyle's fate. He wasn't immediately popular, but his grounded, familiar elements, a classic action movie hero, combined with a touch of humanity, grew on fans over time. So much so that it's easy to venture a guess that the fate of Kyle Crane is the question Smectala and Techland has had to dance around the most in the past 10 years. His coming back, however, was always a foregone conclusion. Techland always wanted to bring him back, and when asked why the Beast was the right time to do so, Smectala explained, "Is there a better way to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Dying Light than to have the original hero of Haran returning?" However, Kyle has changed. The technology has grown, the times have shifted. Bringing Kyle back was much easier said than done. It actually deserves its own talk at a game dev conference, Smectala said. Dying Light the Beast is a first-person game, meaning players do not see Kyle from moment to moment. Techland began by looking at the original animations for the first game, updating them to the reality of 2025, and adding new movements to convey his changes. He's more brutal with his attacks, he is more experienced in his movements, but his age must also be reflected with every breath. Then, of course, the simplest way to showcase more of this new and changed Kyle was to create third-person cutscenes where players can see him in full. Seeing Kyle Crane in third person, of course, required Techland to present Kyle in greater detail than ever before, representing not only his in-universe age, but the hardships of a decade in Baron's captivity. This process was as fun as you'd expect, with Smectala telling me, "The process of creating an older Kyle was actually quite fun," as we sketched out hundreds of concept arts, trying to explore and find out how far we could go with any changes, while still keeping Kyle strong, powerful, and not too daddy. We had Fat Belly Kyle, receding hairline Kyle, sometimes just for laughs, but all to find the perfect balance. Of course, these concept arts are kept locked in our vault, and no one will ever see them. Kyle is a hero, and no one needs to see him in oversized boxer shorts and stained tank top, right? There was also, at one point, another passive concept work meant to find the monster in Kyle Crane. Part of this communicated through his bracer and tainted eye, while there are also connections to the old Kyle through his watch and Jade's bracelet. It's an age-old concept. The old me versus the new me. The old Kyle versus the new Kyle. And while he ultimately still retains his good guy gland, no one escapes captivity and experimentation unchanged. It made Kyle, to some degree, a worse person and less of a person. He is part survivor, and always has been. But there's a new part to him, the Beast. But he's not the only monster in Castor Woods. The Castor Woods is filled with deadly enemies, from the simplest zombie to the most disturbed chimera. And yet, none may compare to the Baron. In a prior Game Rant interview, Smectala described the Baron as a James Bond villain, with the team focusing on someone who is as important as Kyle Crane and charismatic, with something special about the way they look, talk, or think. In some ways, the Baron may even symbolize what a broken Kyle Crane, one who somehow lost the remnants of his humanity, would look like. The Baron was further described as emotionless alongside other key details. He thinks, but he doesn't really feel. He considers everything based on reasoning, on logic, and on facts, and he basically removes the human factor altogether. I think that's what makes him interesting and surprising for players, because when we look at other human beings, we expect them to factor emotions into their thinking. The Baron doesn't really have that. Everything is pure logic. Everything is calculated. Sobieska also specified that the Baron, as a good antagonist, is designed to complement the protagonist in some way. How exactly that manifests remains to be seen, but they represent opposing forces in a changing world. Sobieska even hinted that their desires might be similar, but whether or not that's true remains to be seen. After all, their relationship is a bit complicated. It had to be layered so that Dying Light the Beast wasn't just another open-world revenge story, even while revenge is at the heart of the narrative. As Sobieska explained, their relationship that's a bit more complicated. Kyle is deeply motivated by his need for revenge. To be fair, revenge is always a tricky choice. While it can create dramatic tension right from the start, it also comes with consequences for the protagonist. Let's face it, revenge is a universal theme, but if it's not handled carefully, it can make the hero seem unsympathetic or even ruthless. That's why it was important to add additional layers to the relationship between Baron and Kyle. These layers allow players to see their connection in a more complex light, and, in the end, question who is the real beast in the story. We can't wait for our players to discover that as they play the game. Ensuring that revenge as a motive doesn't fall flat also means there have to be more forces at play. If it were just the Baron and Kyle in Castor Woods, that would be a different story. But Castor Woods is home to many living things, not just the dead, and at least one of them joins up with Kyle, Olivia.
Hey, Olivia, the gas worked. That freak came here.
Did you manage to kill it?
Yeah.
Well, thank God you're alive.
She is effectively a sidekick, the Felix to Kyle Crane's 007, and her story is just as important. Without going into spoilers, Sobieska said, Olivia, on the other hand, plays a different role in the story. On one level, she provides practical help, like information, which is typical for a sidekick character. But she also has her own story, which players will be able to uncover. That's actually even more important, especially when you consider Kyle's revenge-driven arc. If you don't layer the story, it can feel flat or make the protagonist unlikable. By exploring themes like revenge and sorrow through different characters, you can create a more nuanced approach. In this context, Olivia becomes a kinda mirror for Kyle. Despite experiencing her own share of terrible events, she remains vulnerable and compassionate, showing that there's more than one way to navigate this brutal post-apocalyptic reality. Crane will no doubt meet many other citizens of Castor Woods as well, but those won't be his main source of companionship. In the wild, there's only one group interested in being friends with Kyle Crane, the Undead. Fans can expect zombies, volatiles, and chimeras at various stages of their playthroughs, where Techland sought not only to reinvent the wheel, but to elevate all of the genre's classics. While many games are all about innovation, sometimes for the sake of innovation, that's not the goal with Zombies and Dying Light the Beast. Techland wants Dying Light to be the go-to zombie game, the ultimate zombie experience, the zombie video game franchise. As such, Smectala explained that the goal wasn't to make them different, but to make them iconic. Therefore, we don't want to reinvent the genre, at least not yet. We want to make sure we hit all the classic points expected by the fans of zombie fiction. That's why we have slow zombies, fast zombies, mutated zombies, night zombies, etc. Instead of reinventing the wheel of zombie types, Techland focuses on the gruesome horrors of their design and behaviors to ensure that their zombies are truly terrific versus coming across as cartoonish. There are a lot of subtleties here, but Smectala's advice is to look at how ferocious your zombies are, how determined they are to get the player, and try to convey that as strongly as possible using all the means possible. Indeed, any fan can easily determine the difference between a regular biter and a volatile, as their screams during the nighttime experience of Dying Light the Beast rely on a decade of players experiencing the thrill of the dark. But Dying Light the Beast does bring in chimeras as these monstrous new boss fights. They, although not as silly as Dad Bod Kyle Crane, underwent a few conceptual iterations. As Smectala explained, they're mostly seen in the chimeras, and we went through a number of designs to find something we liked. At one point, they were walking tools of destruction with actual weapons merged with their bodies. We had them presented as real victims of experimentation, still wearing torn lab clothes. As always in the pre-production phase, the imagination was wild. Yet, in the end, we decided to focus on something really scary, the body horror. And here, the human anatomy books proved to be the most valuable inspiration. And of course, this brings us to the crux of Dying Light the Beast, the gameplay. Players will have to utilize abilities, melee weapons, ranged weapons, tools, and beast mode to fight and kill these enemies, or they will have to rely on their inner beast and feat to flee from and survive them. Day or night, but especially at night, Castor Woods is a dangerous place. As a whole, Smectala discussed the enemy improvements fans should expect from Dying Light the Beast gameplay, outlining 3 key details. First of all, we looked at our existing enemy archetypes and introduced a number of tweaks based on our own observations and player feedback from previous games. Volatiles got their sense rebalanced to make their roaming and sniffing more fair to players. Spitters' attacks are feedback better with higher clarity. Biters are tougher, standing firm when hit. There are a number of examples for this stack of improvements, and all of them are aimed at targeting and upgrading the part of the experience known to players. Second, we looked at the firearms and how they factor into gameplay. This means we added another layer of behaviors to our enemies, both zombies and humans, to make their reactions meaningful and properly balanced towards a player who uses guns. We also created a complex logic for shooting human enemies, looking at things like group behaviors, taking cover, and mixing firearm use with other accessories, for example, grenades. Third, we introduced the chimeras, big hulking enemies with some twists, created by Baron, who are our way of introducing more boss battles to the game. The whole package of Dying Light the Beast enemies is a nice mix of proven, improved, and new. Players will be able to use several melee weapons in Dying Light the Beast, my favorite of which so far is the simple shovel. The blood and gore have been improved tenfold, so much so that I was constantly and pleasantly distracted by it during my preview of Dying Light the Beast. I seriously enjoyed looking at the damage I was capable of doing to zombies, and while I had access to a simple gun pretty early on, I wasn't there for safe combat. Of course, at some point I will use a better ranged weapon post-release, as Smectala described the latter options as not your old war veteran grandpa guns. Discussing a few examples, Smectala said, "We're introducing the flamethrower for close combat zombie frying, a classic, iconic zombie fiction weapon which, for some reason, we didn't have yet. We're introducing a grenade launcher, great for bigger zombie hordes and encounters with Baron's army. And we're having a saw blade launcher, a great portable gory tool that allows you to launch spinning saw blades that cut enemy limbs in an instant. I guess we're as hungry for Half-Life 3 as any other players on the planet." When the saw blade launcher and trusty shovel fail, all Kyle Crane has are his own 2 feet and hands. Dropkicks and Dying Light the Beast are one of the gaming's purest pleasures, but sometimes Crane will have to flee to survive. Smectala then outlined what fans can expect from Techland's signature parkour, which is obviously a key pillar of the upcoming game. We used parkour to deliver on the promise of go anywhere, climb anything that we gave players in the first game. Our goal back then was to break any walls in the game world, give players a chance to truly go wherever they want, and the chance to peek behind any wall that they see. Second, we used parkour to squeeze more gameplay into every second spent by players on the game. In most other games, traversal is a simple act of pushing the left stick forward, maybe making some course corrections from time to time. In Dying Light, traversal is gameplay, and our movement system keeps players constantly engaged. It's actually quite a spectacle to see someone playing Dying Light. There's so much in the zone, they play the game with their whole body, sitting on the edge of their seat and leaning forward with each jump. No other game really gives you that. Third, we want players to feel almost like they're parkouring themselves. That's why we present parkour in first-person perspective. That's why we spend so much time on little details that highlight the physical connection between the player character and the geometry around or underneath them. Yes, there are more and more games that incorporate parkour into their gameplay loops, but no one focuses on these three areas at the same time. The environment of Castor Woods are deadly during the day, but the night is an entirely different story. Surviving the night becomes the goal, and at times it can feel like a far-reaching one. Lemaire said that night is there to remind you that you are still prey, and described the gameplay changes as a transition from a survival action experience to a horror stealth experience. Spectala also added, "Since the start of the series, our goal was to create an entire night experience, not just a darker version of the regular one that you can get during the day. We were joking that we're creating a 2-in-1 type game, but actually these jokes hold a lot of merit. Both the day and night parts of Dying Light experience play differently, use a lot of different rules, and they really do change how you feel about your presence in the world, how vulnerable or fragile you feel, how you think, and what decisions you make as you play. In The Beast, we're again helped by a new environment which adds a new exciting shade to the experience. Our players are used to nights in cities, but a night in the forest or a night in the swamps, even if it uses the same rules and mechanics, feels completely different." When asked what they wouldn't change about the nighttime experience if they could, Lemaire mentioned the change of pace, the duality between night and day, and Spectala cited the dread of the upcoming night. The scariness of the night works not only because it's full of dangerous enemies that can kill you with one swing, but it's also because we're building up anticipation for that moment to happen. The sound fades out, the sky gets darker, the zombies pause for a few precious minutes, the watch beeps, and then you already know something bad is about to happen. Zombie combat, parkour, and the nighttime experience are the key pillars that define a Dying Light game, and through them, Dying Light the Beast also defines itself as a threequel. But there's a lot more under the hood, with developers discussing the wide range of features present in the game. First, Spectala talked to us about why Dying Light the Beast features a linear narrative. We wanted Dying Light the Beast to set the canon for the universe, solving some unresolved threads from previous games and setting the series for the future. That's why we decided to go with a linear story over which we have full control. This doesn't mean we won't do a branching storyline in the future, though if we do, I'm sure we'll use everything that we've learned from Dying Light 2 Stay Human to make the choices more impactful, clear, and direct. On survival in Dying Light the Beast, Lemaire said the main intention for Dying Light the Beast is to make players experience more of the survival aspect of the franchise. Crafting plays a big role, and scavenging for loot is as dangerous as it is useful to keep pushing. Melee weapons can break and ammunition is scarce. Players can find vehicles in working condition, but eventually they will run out of fuel, pushing them to prepare ahead and look for opportunities in old cars or gas stations. And of course, the story is also leaning into themes related to surviving in the dangerous world, maintaining a community of humans seeking to do more than just survive. With regards on what to expect from Dying Light the Beast's story, Sobieska recognized that that's a tough question. I'd say players shouldn't expect clear-cut answers about good and evil, heroes and villains. In extreme situations, people make choices they never thought they'd make under normal circumstances. I believe it was Aristotle who said that we should be careful while judging someone's actions without fully understanding external factors and circumstances that led to them. Of course, along with the story, there is the element of weird, which Spectala adds, "I also liked how weird we allowed ourselves to be in some of the side narratives and missions. Castor Woods is a special place, a beautiful valley cut off from the world, and strange things have been happening here for decades. Even though the game takes place many years after an outbreak of a deadly virus that brought a zombie apocalypse to the whole world, there are lots of secrets to discover. The Kyle story is there, and it's obviously the star of the show, but I think this is also a part of Dying Light DNA to deliver some left-field, out-of-the-box adventures on the side. Remember Ghazi or Tolga and Fatin? The weirdness, the goofiness, the unexpected is still there." Now, we mentioned vehicles before, and I don't want to skip over that, as Garen on Dying Light adds, "Dying Light is known for its parkour, but sometimes it's better to move faster, using the roads and off-road. As players play, they'll find abandoned ranger cars scattered around. They are perfect for crossing long distances, outrunning volatiles, or hauling heavy stuff when needed. But players have to remember that fuel can run dry when they need it most. Cars can get damaged by running over zombies, and a roaring engine can bring a whole lot of trouble. To stay on the move, it's a good idea to search wreckages and canisters for fuel." Going back to the discussion of guns, Lemaire told us, "For Dying Light the Beast, we consider them powerful tools coming with trade-offs. The first one is about scarcity of ammunition. Finding ammo requires players to focus on certain types of activities. It does not come free. The second is about the noise. Using firearms in the open may attract more zombies, which would result in players using more ammunition than they would have liked for a given encounter. For us, it's important to allow players to expand on the amount of toys at their disposal while making sure we don't turn the game into a shooter. But of course, the newest addition, and the name of the game, is Beast Mode, to which Lemire adds, there's a nice narrative explanation for it, but in simple game terms, Kyle kills chimeras, which gives him beast skill points, which he can spend on new beast abilities to use in Beast Mode. We have both combat and parkour abilities to support our core pillars. The agency players have over Beast Mode evolves. At the beginning, it is something Kyle cannot control. By harnessing the DNAs of chimeras, he will eventually be able to, changing the whole perspective on how players will use it. One thing we've not talked about so far, though, is co-op mode. Spectala adds on this, looking at historical data, about 25 to 30% of Dying Light players are playing the game in co-op. This means that even if we focus most on the immersive, narrative-driven, single-player survival horror part of the experience, there's a significant part of our community that's interested in a more free-for-all, let's have fun with our friends on a Friday night approach to the game. We're all for that, as many of us were raised on classic co-op experiences from the Xbox 360 era, like Army of Two. There's definitely something special about facing a horde of zombies with your buddies. And of course, without a sandbox to play this in, the game doesn't have nearly as much to go off of. Spectala tells us on Castor Wood's map design, it's actually a very long process. Probably not overtly complex, definitely not as much as when we were working on the first game, but still one that requires cooperation of a number of disciplines. The programmers collaborate with level designers to come up with the correct metrics, and as soon as they settle on them, they become the foundation on which the world is built. The level artists apply their work on the levels created by the level designers, but they also have to abide by the number of rules that tell them where and how to put decorations to not break the parkour flow. The QA team relentlessly tests these environments to make sure all connections work, there are no unexpected obstacles on players' paths, and sometimes goes back to the gameplay programmers with requests for some code changes. This is an iterative process, one that lasts throughout the whole production, but we're getting better and better at it. With these graphical and visual enhancements involved in the level design, Spectala adds, Dying Light the Beast brings a number of technical advancements, mostly focused on the feeling of immersion, and lighting plays a very important part in that. We wrote a huge part of our rendering code for lighting and added some missing features. Example, sun moving on the horizon. Combined with current-gen solutions for material rendering, it makes the world much more believable. Oh, and the weather system got an overhaul as well, as we now support more different weather states than before. I'll wait till you see the foggy weather in the swamps. In Dying Light the Beast, Tarnaka Polito adds, we wanted to create a world that feels rich, alive, and is full of different places to explore. The map offers a wide range of environments, from a lively town to dense forests, from steep hills to riverbanks, and from swamps to farmlands or an old industrial park. The town is built on sloping terrain, which makes it very different from the areas of Villador in Dying Light 2 Stay Human. We wanted to make sure the environment feels dense and diverse. There's a whole list of locations here. The tourist town of Castor Woods was once a lively, busy place surrounded by beautiful mountains, forests, and stunning national park. People used to come here to relax, go skiing, and enjoy nature. The national park is a vast forested area filled with scenic viewpoints and rock formations inspired by, among others, the real-world Table Mountains National Park in Poland. You'll come across mountain lodges, picnic areas, and the park ranger's headquarters. They highly recommend taking a moment to read the information boards you'll come across, as they will offer some insight you won't want to miss. Then there's the industrial park. Several factories once operated here, providing jobs to the local community. Even though some were abandoned before the pandemic, buildings, silos, warehouses, and production halls still stand. They offer fantastic opportunities for exploration and looting. There's the Workers' District. Like many towns built around the turn of the 20th century near factories, worker housing was constructed nearby. Simple residential blocks surrounded by playgrounds, grocery stores, and green spaces for recreation. Of course, we mentioned there are farmlands inspired by the traditional European countryside. Here, residents produced and sold local specialties to visiting tourists. Although this area is now partially flooded, you can still see how carefully crafted each farmhouse and its surroundings are. And the historic Villa District. With its unique architecture, Castor Woods' wealthier residents lived here. Players will find a few hotels and guest houses there. Every home has a unique garden and a small detail that hint at who used to live there, which is a lot of fun to create. And with all this in play, Techland is still looking to the future beyond the release of Dying Light the Beast, with Spectala confirming post-launch support, claiming, right now we're focused 100% on launch, and we're trying not to distract ourselves with anything that will happen post-release. That being said, we already have some ideas, even plans already in motion, but we'll verify these plans when the game launches and we'll hear from our players where their appetites lie. But I'm confident Techland will stay being Techland and we'll continue doing what worked for us in the past. In the end, the passion of Dying Light the Beast is the passion of us. To bring all these moving parts together, Smectala expressed his hope for the entry and for the future of the franchise. I hope Dying Light the Beast will be a good, strong exclamation mark, making a statement for the 10th anniversary of the series. We already have an idea for future Dying Light games and projects, so we hope that Dying Light the Beast, along with both previous games, will form a very strong foundation for these upcoming initiatives. And in those words, as well as every quote we mentioned up until now, you can feel the beating heart of Dying Light the Beast's story, of the industry story, of our story: passion. Passion is what makes games. Passion is why we play games. The industry's humble origins are rooted in a passion for fun, despite its relatively cold origins in computer science. Dying Light the Beast's origins are rooted in fun, despite its less than ideal leak. It is the passion of the people of this industry who make games possible, with Roger Craig Smith's passion highlighted by his return and Techland's highlighted by the intensive development of Dying Light the Beast. And it is because of that passion that the industry perseveres, just as Kyle Crane perseveres despite the tragedy, just as every developer perseveres despite the horrors, just as everyone in every tangent of this industry perseveres despite it all. Perhaps everyone is taking licks till 26. Perhaps, unfortunately, a delay carries it until 2027 or beyond. Fingers crossed, with hopes not. But it is a passion, a story like Techland and Dying Light the Beast, that represents the best and strongest among us. And there's no doubt that, come Dying Light the Beast release on September 19th, Techland hopes that players feel this passion. What do you think? Are you excited for this new entry in Techland's zombie series? Well, let us know in the comments below. And for everything about what drives us, our passion, and our love for gaming, stay tuned to Game Rant.